beauty.
Welcome on in. Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by CIBC, the official bank of your Chicago Fire. We are live here at the Heineken Pub 97 at the CIBC Fire Pitch, as we are each and every week. Fred Hubner along with Paul Tenorio, Frank Lopez, getting near the end of the season. Can't get much closer near the end of the regular season. Fire with a big 3-2 win over Philadelphia. They wrap it up in Houston this Sunday. We'll talk about all that. We'll also talk with the general manager of the Chicago Fire, Nelson Rodriguez, will join us. But Frank, you want to end the season at home on a high note, and that's exactly what the Fire did last week.
I agree with you. I mean, and it was great. I mean, you had the tremendous crowd and atmosphere again, just to be there to support the team like they have all season long. And for me, the team, I think, showed a lot of character and personality, because we talked about it, Paul. The first half, sometimes it was a little bit sluggish, I think there were some adjustments made. Paul, you talked about it. 15, 17 minutes in, where Drew Connor, there was more of a onus on him really to make it more difficult. I mean, doing it in the midfield. And then, they fall behind 2-1, after they go up with the one goal, and then a calm, they make a really good change at that time. And he brings a lot of energy to the second half. The movement is better. I think, and the team showed a lot of character for me. They scored 3 great goals, and I got excited with the last one because, all goals were great. But I think for me, just the movement, and it's something that I've seen, the pattern work that they've done in training, where Vincent comes inside and a calm drops, and then they make that overlap and run. And then, obviously, the third goal by Nico was pure class, just the movement and his ability, not to kill the ball, because a lot of times you're thinking all about power, but it's about placement, So the whole build-up for me was great. The team, a lot of character, and it was great to end the season on a positive note at home.
Yeah, I think we talk about progress all the time, and how do you measure progress in a team? Obviously, results is the top measure of progress, right? The more wins you have, the better the season you have. That's what you're ultimately judged on. But I think that there are little moments within a season where you can see progress in situations. And I thought situationally, to go down at home in a game that had implications and has implications in the Eastern Conference race, to not play well in the first half, how do you respond to that? Do you have the character and the fortitude to respond? And I thought the fact that the team came out in the second half down a goal and was able to find a way to get the 3 points speaks to the progress of this team, of the club, of the guys that are on the team, and how they're capable of beating you. Whether it's, whether we want to talk about the class of Nikolic's finish, whether we want to talk about the build-up, the growth of a player like Brandon Vincent, the ability of a guy like David Accam to come off the bench and change the game as he has in recent weeks versus starting because of the injury. I just think the fact that they came back and got a result after that first half was a strong indication of the progress of the Fire this year.
Well, it was huge, too, I thought. After the Fire scored the first goal, and then Philadelphia gets the 2 goals, including that one, which at the time gave them a 2-1 lead. I mean, the people in the stands, people watching the game, guys upstairs, you're questioning things. Well, what's going on? You grabbed a early lead. Now you've fallen behind a team that actually beat you a couple weeks ago. And to come back and, like you said, the addition of Accam in the second half, opening things up, and the last goal, Frank, with Brandon Vincent, getting back to what we saw early in the middle of the season when Brandon was doing a lot of those runs down that left side and crossing the ball. It was nice to see.
It was great to see, and I think the first half, he didn't have the opportunity to go forward as much. I felt that Chris Pontes did a very good job staying with him and tracking him. I think on the other side, where Picault was there, I think he doesn't track back as much, and I think there was more of a opportunity for Polster to get forward, and he did. But I think once they made the change also, and Epps comes in the game, I think within 5 minutes, I think that you saw the opportunity that he saw, he recognized that the movement was there, and the execution was great. But for me, it was great to see stuff that, when you go out to training at times, you see things that build up and the pattern work and the continuity and the understanding of players that, like Paul said, you've seen from the beginning of the season. But when you do it in training, it's different to do it in training, but to be able to do it at games. And for me, it's been great to see a goal come that way from, the execution and the movement and the understanding how to create space, movement, great ball in depth, and then just a run of the timely run of Nikolic to do there. And I think this is something that they talked about. Centrally, where Philadelphia struggles, especially with Medunian and Bedoya. Those two, they don't track as well. They give space as the game goes on, and then the timely run by and the ball being cut back was great. And, you know, the finish, what can we say with this guy? I mean, he's been deadly inside the box.
And I think, too, like, you know, one of the measures I kind of use sometimes in sports is you can always tell who some of the best players are because people who aren't familiar with the sport can come out and watch and they say, hey, who's that guy?
Right.
You know, that guy's really good. I had a group of friends and my brother-in-laws that came out to watch the game on Sunday. They're hockey guys. And everyone after the game said, hey, that guy Akam, he's a difference maker, huh? When he came on, the game changed. I think that's an important sign of just kind of David's level, his ability to impact the game. You know, obviously had a hand in both goals in the second half. And to see him impacting the game, even though he's not fully healthy, even though he's not starting, the Fire are going to need him to change games in the playoffs.
Agreed, yeah.
He is one of the few guys in this league, I think, can change a game on his own because teams have to play you differently when he's on the field. So to see him come in and make an impact, I thought was important, an important indicator for the playoffs.
Yeah, but, you know, it's such a big deal. When you look at teams that have potential to win championships and do something, you have difference makers like Akam, but then you have a guy that you know that can get goals for you, that you can always rely on. And this is what this team has with this guy, Nikolic, has been, for me, really amazing.
Yeah, the Chicago Fire went out in the offseason to get a guy to score goals. Nico's doing it. He's got 24. He leads the race for the Golden Boot. We come back. We'll talk with General Manager Nelson Rodriguez. Chicago Fire Weekly. It's presented by CIBC.
Heineken tastes perfect every single time, and that doesn't happen by accident. It takes 15 years to become a Heineken brewmaster, almost as long as it took me to master this look.
She came to meet a man. She found an angel. Good, ba-da-ba-check. What's his name now? Good, ba-da-ba-check.
Still practicing. It takes 15 years to become a Heineken brewmaster. There's more behind the star.
Don't let pain knock you out of the ring. Our hand, wrist, and elbow experts are pioneers worldwide. You need us in your corner. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. Make an appointment today. After our minimally invasive spine surgery, 80% of golfers maintained or improved their handicap. Be treated by the pros to play more like a pro. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. Make an appointment today.
The heat will wear you out real quick. And we've been through some hot ones. It's very physical. You gotta take care of your body and stay hydrated because every moment matters. That's why I drink Advocare Rehydrate. I've got a job to do.
Why would you go out of your way and wander around a warehouse for paint when you can just swing by your local Ace? Ace has top-rated paint like Valspar, can match any color, and mixes it with something that's hard to find. Award-winning service, because the way we see it, if anyone is going to go out of their way,
it should be us.
It's the Ace Extra Mile promise. If it ever takes more than one trip to complete your paint project, we'll bring you what you need, and delivery is free.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
Welcome back in. Chicago Fire Weekly presented by CIBC. Fred Hubner along with Paul Tenorio, Frank Lopez. Nice to be joined by General Manager Nelson Rodriguez. And Nelson, you haven't been on for a little while. Just want to say congratulations for the first time in a while. The team's going to the postseason.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a good reward for the fans mostly, who have been very patient with Pano and me and what we're trying to do, and have been patient overall. It's been a long time coming, but we're excited to represent our fans and our city in the playoffs.
Well, last time you were here, I think I was asking off camera some questions about player rotation and all of that, and you said, well, we're not in the playoffs yet. And then I think the losing streak continued, and I thought, man, I was really wrong in that point. But there had to be a moment when you got into the playoffs that you take a bit of a deep breath and say, we did it. I know that the season's not over, that the playoffs now open up a whole new set of potentials for goals and how to gauge this year's success. But considering that that was the first goal, did you have a chance to kind of think about that sense of accomplishment?
Candidly, no. I want to reiterate. I think it's fantastic for the fans. I think it's fantastic for the front office staff who've been there so long and battled. But it's a low bar, and it was a hard climb for us. But we aspire for much more. And now that we're in, we believe there's an opportunity to be special. And why not? And I think we have the capabilities. We just have to believe a little bit more and go after it.
Yeah, Nelson, I'm going to say congrats again, because you deserve for all of us to say that. And I think it's been a lot of hard work by yourself, by Pano, and from everyone. And I remember when you talked about this plan and this process. And besides the players that you've added, I just wanted to ask you more from a playing standpoint. When you look at the team last year, and then the players that you've added, what the one thing that you've seen, or a couple of things that you've seen, the improvement of the team, whether it's on the field, the playing style, stuff that besides the players that are doing really well that you brought in, what things that you've seen, from last year to this year that have improved on the field?
The first thing that I would point to is mentality. I think individuals and collectively our mentality has improved. I still have a question as to whether it's championship quality and caliber, and we're going to learn a little bit more. At the end of the first year, I thought the big takeaway was we learned how to compete. At the end of this year, I think we're learning how to win. I won't say learned yet, because it's still one season, it's a small sample size. But I think our mentality is better. I think this, although our road record doesn't reflect it, just an attitude to want to try to win every time we step on the field. We are learning to manage situations and all, although I'm still not with you on squad rotation. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is, and it was a conscious effort, we needed to improve simply our passing and receiving. And so we've become a much better passing and receiving team. And again, some credit goes to guys for their work in the offseason, guys like Brandon Vincent. Some credit goes to guys like Matt Polster, who is now, I think, really just starting to embrace his new role, and I think he's showing a whole nother level of quality and class in that spot. And then, of course, additions of Juni and Dax and Basti, more familiarity from Michael and Lucho, all those things I think contribute, and so stylistically I think we're better.
Yeah. You speak about familiarity by Lucho and also Michael DeLu, and you have a situation where those guys came in last year, they were required to score some goals because you didn't have goal scorers. You go on out and get Nico, who scores goals, but the other two guys never slacked off. They never stopped hustling. They never stopped going after the ball. And I think that's one of the things that people watching the Fire games this year have really enjoyed about the team, is because they're working so hard. And it was a shame to see Michael go down because of how hard he worked, but him and Lucho, just the way everybody's been working.
Fred, I'm really grateful that you raised that, because I think we are trying to build a group that represents the citizens of Chicago, and work ethic is a big part of that. And people might not realize, but Lucho started the year on the bench, and then he kind of won the spot from Michael, and then Michael was a reserve for a while, and then he reclaimed the spot into the starting lineup. And there was a stretch of games where Nico didn't score, but his work ethic didn't drop. It continued very high, and so I'm proud of that. I think, again, it speaks to mentality, but I think the character of the men that we've brought in and the forging of a team identity is part of the progress that I'm proud of, and still has a ways to go, but I think we've improved.
I think we'll talk a little bit more about how you move forward from this year. That's not done yet, next segment, but how much has the progress of guys like Brandon Vincent, Matt Polster, Georgi Mihailovic, the younger guys on this team, changed or altered how you think about next year? Have they surprised you or given you enough confidence to maybe alter those plans a little bit?
Fair question. I'd be remiss if I didn't also give some credit to the coaching staff, who I think has done a really good job in helping those players develop. Even guys like Jonathan Campbell, I think, is better this year. Look, when we drafted Brandon, we envisioned a starter and a high-quality player, and I think he's showing that. Matt, we inherited, but I think he's showing a new level at a new position. Georgie's development has been as we hoped, perhaps even as we've expected. It does alter our plans a little bit because now we need to find guys to push them so that they don't get complacent or comfortable thinking they're starters. We want competition at all times for all spots.
The competition continues this weekend when the Chicago Fire wrap up the regular season. They travel on down to Houston. A lot of things still to be determined when it comes playoff time. Game coming up Sunday at 3 o'clock. You can catch the game, the pregame at 2:30 on NBC Sports Chicago. Dan Kelly, Frank Lopez on the call. A big match not only for the Chicago Fire as they try to get ready for their seeding in the playoffs, but also for Houston. We'll talk more about that throughout the course of the show. More about the Chicago Fire with General Manager Nelson Rodriguez when we come back at Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by CIBC.
A liberal arts education is more than just a degree.
It's about learning and evolving in a place where tradition and innovation meet.
It's a balance of embracing history while challenging the expectations of our future.
It's where scholar meets athlete.
Artist meets researcher.
Leadership meets service.
And inspiration meets opportunity.
See beyond the degree where possibilities are endless. Find your balance at St. Xavier University.
In case you need anything, just give me a call. Thank you.
P.O. Box 17. Of course I'm a real company.
You got the area code.
Everything your customers see tells a story. Let the UPS store help you tell the right one. From business cards and banners to expertly packed shipments to mailboxes with a real street address. Come in today for help.
The new Club Blackhawks app, presented by Bolero. Available now on Google Play and the App Store. Get the inside scoop on all things Blackhawks. Test your player knowledge with trivia, play mini games, and other activities. Create your own avatar. The new Club Blackhawks app, presented by Bolero. Show your team pride and submit your photos for a chance to get featured. The new Club Blackhawks app, available now on the App Store and Google Play.
So I'm an avalanche survivor. I've been buried by a large class 3 with Alfred and a lot of people that are around. I'll tell you exactly what it's like to die in an avalanche.
Welcome back in. Chicago Fire Weekly presented by CIBC. Fred Hubner, Paul Tenorio, Frank Lopez, joined for one more segment with General Manager Nelson Rodriguez. And when you guys came in, you and Pano last year, you wanted to change things. You wanted to progress. Last year, no playoffs. This year, getting to the playoffs. What's next for your process?
Consistency. You know, we need to show that we can maintain a high level of play and results for an extended period of time. So I think that becomes really important to us. And I think consistency of the roster would help in that if we can achieve it.
Well, I have a question that's kind of goes into maybe a little bit of a league picture, but certainly impacts that idea of consistency and how you build towards that. The league has yet to announce whether or not it's expanding targeted allocation money. I've reported that they're talking about moving the cap up to $1.5 million, which would open up a whole nother market of players for teams to bring in. In other words, instead of capping it at $1 million, that the players could be paid as much as $1.5 million. They've talked about adding $800,000. We haven't heard anything. How difficult is it to plan for next year without any details?
I need you to keep saying it over and over and over again. It's very, very difficult. It's very hard to plan. You have to create so many different multiple scenarios. At times we sit back and say, well, that was just ridiculous what we did. It needs to change, quite honestly. Now, I worked in a league office for a long time, and so I respect those guys and understand the process, but the league's at a different point in its evolution, and we need this information more than a year in advance, actually.
Yeah.
And we don't even have it 4 months to next year.
Yeah. Now, Nelson, does the injury to Duluth kind of change your thought process with the players that you were thinking about bringing in? Are you looking at
Frank,
that position
it does a bit. It does. You know, before the Duluth injury, I would have said we need to improve our competition along all our lines except for perhaps as forward.
Yeah.
And we do now need to look at that. Now, Michael will be back, and he'll be great, but we have to gauge whether what we currently have is enough to sustain us until he returns. So it does force us to think a little differently.
And then anything in the back, I know Dean, he should be able to come back, I think, probably during the preseason and be ready.
Well, look, the first thing I'd say is our expectation is we're going to lose a player in the expansion draft, I think. We don't want to, but I think we will. I don't know where that's going to fall positionally, but you have Christian's injury. Zhao is only one of 2 players who we don't have under control, so we'd have to see if we can re-sign Zhao if he wants to return, and we'll have that conversation at the end of the year. So the back line quickly gets put into flux, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Bastian Schweinsteiger, when he signed here, you guys talked about it being a mutual option. We've heard no update as to whether or not that's been executed. Can you update us as to what is Basti's future with this team? Do you guys want him back? Does he want to be back? And when do you see a solution to that contract?
I think we're mutually pleased. I think that Basti for us has clearly met our expectations, and I hope that we have met his and Anna's. I don't like negotiating in season. I think it just runs too great of a risk of harboring resentment or ill feelings. And so we agreed. We've stayed with that agreement. My sense is he'd like to return. My sense is he and his wife are happy. Clearly, I think we're a better club and a better playing side with him. So with those 2 wills, I'd like to think we'll find the way.
I was just going to ask Nelson to talk a little bit about the USL partnership. It seems like it's been beneficial for both. You know, I mean, the opportunity to send players there, and I mean, they've been in the playoffs. It seems like it's a great situation for both. Is that something that's going to continue?
Yeah, we're speaking to Tulsa already about renewing our affiliation. I don't want to speak for them, but I think they're happy. We've been thrilled. David Vaudrell and the coaching staff there have been great. I think it's been really positive for Colin and Joey. They've gotten great minutes in a competitive environment. They're now in the playoffs. They won a couple games in the Open Cup. It's been a really good situation for us, and we'd like to continue it.
How are things looking injury-wise as you lead into this final game with Houston and then the playoffs? I mean, is there a good chance that Pano's going to have a full squad, everybody ready for the postseason?
We're much, much closer. You know, Juni and Basti are really in that final stretch, and it's a matter also of finding that right balance of we're going to need to ramp up their work to get them closer to game ready, but we can't cross that line to have them have a relapse. I think it's difficult to imagine either could play 90 right now, and we have to work on that as well. But I think both will be ready for the playoffs.
I was thinking, you know, if you play a playing game, I'd rather, you know, I'm thinking as a player, you know, I'd rather play a game than sit out 2 weeks. But when you talk about this scenario now, the best situation would be let's win at Houston, get second place, and have the 2 weeks to really prepare.
From your lips to God's ears, Frankie. We'll take that. I love that idea.
Listen, before we let you go, I just wondered, you know, a lot of this you had to expect, right? You sign guys because you expect them to score goals, you expect them to start, you expect them to do well. Has there been a player, though, this season whose growth has surprised you at how far they've come in one season, or that they've really stood out as somebody who's taken advantage of this year in the playing time?
I don't know if this will be surprising, but Matt Polster. I think beyond just his play, Matt has found a new level of maturity and professionalism. And I don't mean to suggest that he was immature or he wasn't professional, but I think it's really starting to come together for him. I think he's really starting to understand Pano and the coach's messaging and what a soccer lifestyle means and what it is to prepare and be prepared 24/7. And I would say for me, his explosion has been faster than I would have thought, but I'm not complaining. And I also think he has some levels to go. I think he can and will get better.
I still feel he likes going in the middle at times. He misses because you see him throughout the game just kind of drifting there, and he goes, okay, let me go back outside.
It's a lovely weapon for us, right? And it's an element of Brandon's game that we need to try to evolve in the offseason to bring into his game as well.
And both of those players should know that especially in the wake of the World Cup, which we didn't even touch on today. They both have a chance to break into a national team pool if they continue to
I agree
progress.
with you, and I said it in the first segment, the thing that I loved about that movement, it's something that I've seen in training with the staff working that pattern and the movement to create that space, and it was great to see that now in a game and lead to a goal.
Nelson, we appreciate you jumping on in. Good luck on Sunday. Good luck in the postseason.
Thanks. Come out. We need you fans.
Nelson Rodriguez, Chicago Fire General Manager. We come back. We'll talk about one of the big pickups this season. He's going for the Golden Boot, Nemanja Nikolic. You're watching Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by CIBC.
The blades of a combat chopper spin at 380 RPMs. Not even close to an Echo trimmer. Now that's shock and awe. Power on and on.
If you have recently suffered an injury or had surgery, let the experts at NovaCare Rehabilitation get you back to an active lifestyle. Our comprehensive programs deliver the highest level of physical therapy, hand therapy, sports medicine, and work health rehabilitation. Our highly skilled therapists develop individualized treatment plans to exceed your expectations. So, don't live in pain. To request an appointment today, visit NovaCare.com. NovaCare, the power of physical therapy.
Don't let pain knock you out of the ring. Our hand, wrist, and elbow experts are pioneers worldwide. You need us in your corner. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. Make an appointment today. After our minimally invasive spine surgery, 80% of golfers maintained or improved their handicap. Be treated by the pros to play more like a pro. Midwest Orthopedics at Rush. Make an appointment today.
Meet Jameson Caskmates, the newest member of our family. Triple distilled Irish whiskey, finished in craft stout barrels. The story of two neighbors, a distiller and a craft brewer, teaming up to create something new. The smoothness of Jameson and the character of a stout, together in one glass. So raise a glass to new tastes that become old favorites. Welcome Jameson Caskmates to the family.
What's more powerful than the winds of a Cat 5 hurricane? An Echo backpack blower. So, yeah, it'll clear a path. Power on and on.
Welcome back in. Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by CIBC. Talking Chicago Fire soccer as they wrap up the regular season this Sunday down in Houston. A 3 o'clock start, 2:30 pregame on NBC Sports Chicago. I want to talk about Nemanja Nikolic. Right now, he leads the Golden Boot race. He has 24, thanks to his hat trick the other day. He came out. They wanted a guy to score goals. He started doing that when the season began. Then he hit that 9-game stretch with no goals. But he's got 8 in his last 6 games. This is exactly, Frank, what you want from your goal scorer heading to the postseason.
I mean, look, sometimes it takes time for guys to adjust to a new league that they come into, because wherever he's been, if you look at his history, he's been able to score goals. He's a guy in the box, so he needs service. But, if you would have brought only him, it would have been difficult for him. But the other pieces that the team has put together have really helped him, because he needs service, he needs other quality players around him. And I think, going from year one to second year, I think they've been able to add the pieces in the midfield, and then I think you bring a striker now that get benefit from all those guys that you brought in. And for me, it's been unbelievable, Paul, the quality that he has, I mean, inside the box, his movement, his timing of few runs, he's always there, and it's just crazy. Sometimes, like the strikers, that score goals, it's almost like they have a magnet. The ball always finds them. But it's also, for me, the work that he does off the ball from a defensive side. Because sometimes you get strikers that say, okay, I'm going to score goals. You guys work hard. But then he goes out wide sometimes. He tracks back. So he does a lot of work for the team, and it's something that's appreciated by everyone.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, when we talk about, Adrian Heath used to say something I loved when he was talking about Kyle Larin. You would tell him all the time, there's a reason who makes the most money in Europe? Goal scorers. There's a reason why. It's the hardest thing in soccer to do, and it's the most valuable thing. You got to put the ball in the back of the net to score, and if you can do that consistently, you make the most amount of money. We can talk about every other skill in the world in soccer. We can talk about size and speed and skill sets and dribbling and passing. If you can put the ball in the net, consistently in this game, you're going to be a valuable asset to a team somewhere. This is what Nemanja Nikolic has done everywhere he's been. 136 goals now across 7 seasons in 3 different leagues. He's on pace for his 5th Golden Boot in 7 seasons. In 3 different leagues, he'll have won a Golden Boot. It's impressive. It's a very valuable asset, and I agree with you, Frank. I mean, this is not something he's done on his own. I don't think it's a coincidence that the 8 games he didn't score a goal coincided when Brandon Vincent and Matt Polster were out with injuries. This team, a lot of the service comes from the fullback movement and play and overloading. But hey, man, the guy puts the ball in the net almost every single game.
Yeah, and I think maybe that was also a period where the team wasn't playing as well, because I do agree with you with Polster and Vincent, but also the midfield and then the wide guys. I think, you talk about the pieces that, they've been added in the midfield with McCarty and Schweinsteiger coming and Juninho and stuff like that. But that's been also the help with the calm, and his ability from all those guys really to work hard for the team, knowing that, okay, we have a guy that we need to get him service into the box, but it's not the guy that stands,
right.
His movement. I mean, when he recognizes it could be the 87th minute, and this for me, I used to see some of the great goal scorers. That could be 87 minutes. You think the guys are dead tired, but then when they smell that opportunity to go, it's like the guy, it just boom, he makes that sprint that's necessary. But for me, it's been amazing to see. Like, he's been so clinical. He's a guy in the box. I saw tapes before he came, and it's very similar here. But also, I think I appreciate the work that he does for the team. He finds ways, even when he doesn't score, to help the team on the defensive end. He does the work. He works hard. And he tracks, and I think that's great. That's the mentality and the character you need to have a successful team.
And I just want to say, I got a little bit frustrated, and he has a way of doing this, but my buddy Kurt Larson in Toronto, he likes to push buttons, and he was saying, this guy scores goals in bunches, and it's about scoring in every. No, go look at the goals he's scored. He's scored across a lot of games. He's had a couple games where he scored multiple. This was just his first hat trick. I get that we can look at it, but this is a guy who scores every other game at the very least, very consistent over the whole season. And Kurt doesn't want to call him an MVP candidate because he doesn't do everything else. But at the end of the day, like I said, man, if you're scoring goals the way he's scoring, this is the most important thing you can
does
ask for.
I don't understand what he does to get the ball and beat 3 guys. That's not the kind of player he is. If you watch the game, even the last game, the work that he does defensively and stuff like that. The only thing I complain to Paul is that when he does the interview with him, don't ask him 2 questions because it's like 10 minutes.
The second question.
Commander's in my ear saying one more question.
Yeah, the second
Commander,
question.
we love you. We're just
always tough. The one thing you got to make sure you say, he was the MLS Player of the Week after that 3-goal outburst against Philadelphia. Also after that first goal, and you saw it on the video, showing the Michael DeLue jersey and holding it up, shows you how much he cared for DeLue and how the rest of the team has. We'll continue talking about the Chicago Fire as they get ready to take on Houston this coming Sunday. We'll take a look at it when we come back. Chicago Fire Weekly. It is presented by CIBC.
CD Peacock, turning moments into memories since 1837.
When you really want to save big on a hotel, just go to Priceline. They add thousands of new deals every day up to 60% off.
That's how Kaylee and I got to share this trip together at this amazing hotel.
Yeah, Ash and I share everything. Dresses, makeup, water bottles.
Oh, we do?
Mm-hmm. We share secrets, shoes, toothbrushes.
What?
Yeah, I forgot mine, so I've been using yours.
Seriously?
Well, what's the big deal? I mean, we even dated the same guy.
Who?
Go to Priceline and get the hotel deals you won't find anywhere else.
Deep shot. You want more of that? We got you. Hundreds and hundreds of live games.
A gorgeous spin.
Get the full season.
All season long.
Monthly pricing, no sweat. Oh, you just want to watch your team.
Yes, sir.
Anytime, anywhere. It's that easy. Fire it up on all your connected devices. Free preview October 17th to the 24th. Go to NBA.com/League Pass or get it with the NBA app.
Here come the Hawks, the mighty Blackhawks. Take the attack, yeah, and we'll back you Blackhawks. You're flying
Welcome back in. It is time for Fire Field Vision, powered by NovaCare. The Chicago Fire, with their final regular season game of the season, they travel on down to Houston to take on the Dynamo. A 3 o'clock start, 2:30 pregame on NBC Sports Chicago. And Frank and Paul, the thing you want to do is you want it home. You're 12-2-3 at home. You go on the road. You want to wrap this thing up. Getting a win on the road in Houston would be huge going into this postseason.
100%. And I think we talk about momentum and playing well towards the end of the season. But now, look, if you have to play the playing game, I think it's important to have it at home. But there's still an opportunity maybe to get that second seed, depending on what happens in the other games. And now we know how huge that would be to have maybe 2 weeks to prepare for that game, to get some of the guys like Schweinsteiger and Jr. a little bit more time to get healthy and have a little bit more time to prepare for your opponent that you're playing. That would be huge. So there's a lot to play for in this last match, Paul.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, the seeding is up for grabs. Your chance to host a playoff game is up for grabs. Even if you don't get the 2 seed, which gives you a bye, lets guys get healthy, ensures that you're playing in a semifinal that puts you just 2 good results away from the conference finals. If you lose, you open up the door that you're on the road in the first round of the playoffs. Yeah. So there is so much to play for going down to Houston, and Houston has a ton to play for. It has a chance to host a playoff game if it gets a good result. So it should be a very competitive game, and I think for the Fire players, you're right. I mean, momentum factors in. Nico's going to want to keep scoring. I think everyone's going to want to play well and keep things going, and all of that matters. But the thing about this league, and for everything that everyone wants to say about no promotion, relegation, and all that stuff, the playoffs do create things that you're playing for in the final game of the season. I mean, there are 3 teams fighting for 1 playoff spot in there. We'll get to all this later, but that's the thing I love. And so there's plenty for this Fire team to play for in Houston. If they lose a game, they're losing seeding. They're losing potentially a home playoff game. That's big.
Yeah.
The other thing you look at is when Michael DeLue going out, you had mentioned this when we had Nelson in, is trying to figure out exactly how they're going to play up top and what they're going to do with DeLue not there. Georgi Mihailovic has come in. He's played well. This is the first time he's gotten playing time at this kind of level, and now he's 2 games away from going into the postseason. Now with the guys coming back, you don't know if he'll play, but what he's been doing, I think you need everybody to pull together and get that chemistry going. And then adding a couple guys makes it even better.
And Frank, I mean, you can speak to this. You were a young player, turned pro at 16 years old.
No, he was a young player?
Yeah, once upon a time.
I still show Paul my pictures at home.
Okay.
And he goes, that was you?
But, it's different to play at home in your comfort zone, as a young player, and you go to the locker room that your parents are in the stands, you wake up and you eat breakfast in your own home, you sleep in your own bed. Going on the road where nothing is normal, nothing is comfortable, the other team often dictates the game, the weather may be different, whatever it is, it's different for young players on the road. For a player like Georgi, who is going to be asked to play a big role in the playoffs, being able to go to Houston and play an important role in that game, in a must-win game, this is where we talk about development. Yeah. You cannot get this from training. You cannot get this in little moments, 10 minutes at home here or there. This kid's going to have a chance to grow up as a player, and these moments in the season give it to him. So, yes, it's essential for Georgi to go to Houston, and if he starts or if he comes off the bench, to make an impact and to show, because when you get to the playoffs, it's not going to be easier. Whether it's a play-in game against Columbus at home or a road trip to NYCFC in the semifinals or whatever it is, this is where you begin to test yourself for these moments.
I agree with you. Nothing can help that maturity process and the experience in playing in difficult matches like this. It really means something. And the one thing with Georgi Mihailovic that I've seen, with young players, and you see how much the team respects him, because when he moves, they give him the ball. Mm-hmm. A lot of times if he loses 1 or 2 touches, if he loses 1 or 2 balls, the players, you're making a run and they're looking the other way. Then I said, okay, keep moving. We're not going to, but they have that respect and that belief that this kid can do something. He's got quality, and then he wants the ball. What I've seen in the last 2 games, he's matured a lot and he wants the ball in dangerous situations. And I think for me, the way I look how he's matured is that when I see players on his team, that they look for him because they want him to get the ball because they understand that he can make a difference.
And you want, what I like about this Houston game is it gives certain players difficult matchups that help prepare you for the postseason. So Brandon Vincent and Matt Polster are going to be playing against two talented wingers
Great
in
test.
Houston. Very important test for them to be able to have the balance of defending guys like Elise and Kyoto and still getting forward and playing that role. Georgie's going to get kicked by Alex. You know the guy. You brought him into the league. I love Georgie having to go up against a veteran like Alex, who's having a very good year. He's a smart player. His movement, his passing, it's going to challenge a kid like Georgie, matching up in midfield. That's a great learning experience before you go into the playoffs against, whether it's Will Trapp or whether it's against Felipe or whoever it may be in the playoffs. This is the way you learn. So some of these matchups in this game against Houston, I think, is a nice setup for the postseason.
No, and it's great for Georgie to get this experience. And for me, in an ideal situation, I mean, if, to have the ability with the Lou being out, to have now Schweinsteiger and the experience of Juninho and the three in the midfield, and if one of them doesn't, is not able to start, then maybe Georgie gets an opportunity, Mihailovic, to start. But then can you imagine if you have, McCarty with Schweinsteiger and Juninho, the experience, especially in games like that, and because, when the team was playing at its best, those three guys really had a big input.
Well, it's amazing, too, and you mentioned McCarty there. We talked when Dax wasn't playing, we talked about missing him. When he is playing, he solidifies everything. It's kind of like a warm pair of slippers. He's there. We don't worry about a lot of things. He's going to make good things happen. He's going to prevent some bad things from happening, and that's nice to have him back. The U.S. men's national team not going anywhere. One less thing to worry about, and now he can just concentrate on the postseason. The Chicago Fire wrap up the regular season this coming Sunday. You can catch the game with Dan Kelly and Frank Lopez on the call. 2:30 pregame, a 3 o'clock kick down in Houston. Watch it on NBC Sports Chicago. It's Decision Day 2017. All the games in the league starting at 3 o'clock. We come back, we'll take a look at the Dynamo and the problems they pose. You're watching Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by CIBC.
We don't give up. We don't quit. We keep going. Day in, day out. We fight on. Why? Because we are champions. Be a champion.
Why would you go out of your way and wander around a warehouse for paint when you can just swing by your local Ace? Ace has top-rated paint like Valspar, can match any color, and mixes it with something that's hard to find. Award-winning service, because the way we see it, if anyone is going to go out of their way,
it should be us.
It's the Ace Extra Mile promise. If it ever takes more than one trip to complete your paint project, we'll bring you what you need, and delivery is free.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
Meet Jameson Caskmates, the newest member of our family. Triple distilled Irish whiskey, finished in craft stout barrels. The story of two neighbors, a distiller and a craft brewer, teaming up to create something new. The smoothness of Jameson and the character of a stout, together in one glass. So raise a glass to new tastes that become old favorites. Welcome Jameson Caskmates to the family.
NovaCare is the right choice for all athletes. As the exclusive provider of physical therapy to the Chicago Fire, we know the importance of keeping you active. Our sports medicine program, along with our movement assessments, aids us in finding your weak link and designing a program for you. We offer a full array of home care products so you can continue your care when you're not here. To request an appointment at any of our convenient Chicago locations, visit NovaCare.com today. NovaCare, the power of physical therapy.
Welcome back in. Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by CIBC. The Fire getting ready for their final regular season game of the season as they go down to Houston and take on the Dynamo. It is time for the Valspar Primer. Valspar, the official paint of your Chicago Fire. And we talk about what the Fire are playing for, but Houston's playing for things too. I mean, now they know they're going to the postseason, but they're playing for position.
Yeah, and Paul talked about it. I mean, the last game they're playing, Houston has Chicago at home at 47 points. KC's playing on the road with 49. So there's an opportunity for them, to earn that fourth spot and play. So there's a lot to play home. And Paul, at home, they have so much pace out wide, with Ellis and Kyoto, and now you have Torres, a guy that can score. And they play so much on the break, and then it's almost like the front four don't even come back. They don't defend. You know, everything is forward. They really don't have a way that they build up play that's just very direct, and they try to use their athleticism and their pace to to get behind teams.
And you brought up a good point. I mean, they do play not always Alex there when they're at home because they want to play two destroyers in central midfield that can sit in front of that back line because they play so direct and because those other four aren't going to drop off and play defense. They have Cabezas, they have Ricardo Clark, guys that are going to stay home and get stuck in, cover a lot of ground defensively, and it gives them that flexibility to go forward. They've been so difficult to beat at home because of that. They pin you back in your own third because they're so dangerous going forward. What I like about this kind of team against the Fire, though, is when teams attack and play relatively open soccer against the Fire, it gives them opportunities to get forward and create those overloads. But it's much harder if you're a fullback to leave your position and get forward on the ball when you know you've got somebody with pace waiting there for a long direct ball. It puts you in a very difficult spot as a fullback.
And then you called it. I think this is going to be a very good matchup for both outside backs, you know, if it's Vincent or Polster playing, because if it's Kyoto and Ellis out wide, you know, they have a lot of pace. They don't track back, you know, and if you go forward, you know, they're going to cheat, and they're just waiting. Even if Derek gets the ball, it's like they don't have a way. You don't say, like, this is their identity. They're going to look to build up play out of the back. No, he gets it. He's going to look to be direct, and I agree with you, Paul, with Cabezas and Clark. They're athletic. You know, they cover a lot of ground, and even with the front four, the wide guys, when they don't come back, they have the ability to go now out wide and cover the space for them. And then it all depends with Alex, because they've used him at times in front of those two, but since they've got Martinez, their DP, they've used him a little bit there. Sanchez, they've used them. So it'll be interesting to see, but at home, they bomb forward. They're all about the counter. They're all about the break. And then they have a guy in Torres now that can score goals inside that box.
And depending on who's available for the Fire, you can counter that a little bit, right? I mean, if Juninho's healthy and can play and starts, you play Dax and Juninho underneath Georgie in that midfield or underneath whoever else you want to put there, and you can leave them home, and those fullbacks can get forward because those are defensive midfielders that can cover ground defensively, like you were saying with Dax, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility. If Juninho can't play and it's just Dax deeper in that central midfield, then I think you have to be more conservative as fullbacks in choosing when to go. This is for me, one of the biggest responsibilities of a fullback is knowing when to go and when to stay. This is a great test for these two players to know and to understand the moment in the game to go and the moment to stay.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that. I think we've seen Vincent over the course of the year learning that, trying to figure it out early in the year, not going as much, and then slowly but surely getting better.
Well, and I think Paul brings a good point, because I think the thing with the Fire, the center backs, they do have the ability to go out wide at times, because a lot of center backs are not comfortable to get out of that central area, you know, but I think when Vincent or Polster get forward, you've seen Kapelhoff sometimes get caught out wide in those channels, and he's got the pace to deal in those 1v1 situations. At times, you know, Dax McCarty coming in between the center backs, or him sliding wide to cover, or Myra going out wide. So they have guys that feel comfortable, and they have the pace to go out wide if they get caught up forward. But the one thing is that you have to be good with the ball. You have to be good in possession. You can't lose it in bad spots, because they do have the pace to hit you on the counter.
And you're dealing with three up top, too. Yeah. So you always want to have – you never want to get isolated 1v1 as a back line across. So you don't want to end up 3v3 with Kyoto, Elise, and Torres, you know? You want to at least try to have four back there at all times if they're going to stay high. The question is then, how do you start to break them down? And this is a game also where maybe it becomes a game for a guy like David Accam, whether he starts or comes on late, where maybe you counter by being a little bit more direct and you try to get him in space isolated as well.
But this is with the outside backs. If they push really high with the three, I think the space is going to be there for the outside backs to pick their moment and get forward and create those overloads like they've done so well. So it'll be an interesting tactical match.
When we come back, we'll take a look at Decision Day, as there's still a lot to be determined of the standings of both the Eastern and Western Conference. You're watching Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by CIBC.
Go inside the lives of Chicago's biggest sports stars, only on Inside Look, presented by Cadillac. Your questions answered.
They got this big because basketball got this big.
Idols revisited.
They bring the atmosphere and the energy that you need throughout the grind of the season.
And the stories behind the headlines revealed.
Definitely a moment that I'll never forget.
Catch a new interview every month with Inside Look on NBC Sports Chicago. Visit NBCSportsChicago.com for listings.
I'm Jimmy. This is my definition of fresh since 1983.
Everyone loves a dinner party until it's time for the cleanup. With the Bosch dishwasher, you'll make short work of even the largest piles of post-party dishes. With the innovative microwave rack, which offers the industry's largest third rack capacity without losing space on the lower racks, lets you get more dishes cleaned per load. And Bosch is America's quietest dishwasher brand, so you won't even know it's running in the background. See the complete lineup of Bosch dishwashers at Abt, pleasing people since 1936.
Mariah Haberman here from Discover Wisconsin. Join me and the rest of the DW crew every week on this station for all things Wisconsin. Find us on social media right now for gorgeous photos and great Wisconsin giveaways. Speaking of free stuff, did you know every month we give away an exciting vacation? This month you could win a prize package to Sheboygan. Just visit discoverwisconsin.com for details. Saturday mornings at 10 on NBC Sports Chicago.
Welcome back in. Chicago Fire Weekly presented by CIBC. They're calling it Decision Day 2017, the final day of the MLS season. All the teams play at the same time. They all get underway at 3 o'clock. And it's nice to see that even baseball is learning something from soccer finally, because baseball has decided to do that the last couple of years. So Major League Baseball, all the criticism they may give to the beautiful game, they stole something from soccer.
Listen, a lot of American sports stole a lot of things from soccer, okay? That's not the only thing. And when I was in Orlando, my favorite thing that's ever happened to the influence specifically of MLS was the Orlando Magic putting out a thing trying to create a supporters section at Magic games to get what Orlando City had. Anyways, all that aside, I love Decision Day, and what I love also, I kind of hinted at this earlier in the show, but we played 34 weeks. We're going into the 34th week of a season that started the first weekend in March, and there's a lot at stake in these last few games.
Yeah.
Yes, you might not be able to get relegated. Yes, you might not be able to get promoted, but that doesn't mean you don't have something to play for. There are coaches who are feeling like they're coaching for their job. There are coaches who are out of the playoffs who have already lost their job. There are players who are going to get, chances to play in the playoffs or not. Seedings, fans who are going to get to see home playoff games and not. A lot on the line here. I think all but one team, two teams in the entire playoffs are playing for something this weekend.
Right,
the only teams that aren't playing for something that are in the playoffs are Toronto and the Red Bulls. They're locked in at 1-6 in the East. Everyone else that's in the playoffs has something to play for, plus Dallas and RSL trying to get in. So a lot to play for, and I love that.
Well, listen, I don't wait for decision day. You know why? Because I knew what was going to happen in the end. I read Paul's article before the season started, and he had everyone. I think he had one team. I think you've gotten one wrong right now, right? I mean, L.A.
Well,
in the West. In West.
I wonder if I wrote that article before they hired Kurt Anolfo, because maybe I would have had the Galaxy out.
Okay. So
but I had the Galaxy in, and I had Houston out. So credit to Wilmer Cabrera. And credit to Kurt Anolfo for ruining my predictions. Well, it would have been 12 for 12.
You're right. I mean, that was close. So next year, I want to just make sure I suggest to everyone, just read 442 and Paul's article coming out, and he can tell you exactly where things are going to end up in the end.
I'm going to get one of those phone lines like in Vegas. You call in, you pay a little subscription.
I know a lot about those. I used to work in those. Let's take a look at the Eastern Conference standings as we get ready for the final game of the season. You see Toronto, as you mentioned, they're all set with 68 points. The Red Bulls with 47. They know where they're going. They're playing the third-place team. But after that, 2 through 5 is all, it's all up for grabs.
For me, you're right. But it's amazing because – the Red Bulls, I know they're in 6th place, but they're starting to play well towards the end of the season. And there was a point, Paul, where we looked at Columbus and we said, man, they have a tough schedule. Will they be there? And then they've gotten it together. So they're going into the playoffs
Frank, now
the right way.
They've got to try to play with this news hovering over them that the potential relocation of the franchise. The fact that he announced that right before the playoffs is crazy because they have so much to play for still. And then if you're the Fire, if you look at what you've got going on here, I mean, there are some scenarios here where you could finish second. There are scenarios where you could drop all the way to 5th, all coming down to this last result. There's so much to play for here in the seeding. But you're right, those 5th and 6th place teams, you can look here at what the scenarios are. to have to lean forward and put my glasses on to be able to read this.
Well, yeah, the first scenario is if the Fire win, they'll have 58 points, which would be the most a Fire team has ever scored. They can finish second or third, and the finish as the number 2 seed if NYCFC lose. The number 2 scenario is if they draw, they can finish third or fourth. If they lose, as you mentioned, Paul, they have a chance where they can finish as low as fifth.
Yeah, so a lot on the line in Houston, and I think, look, you want to control your own destiny, and that's what the Fire have done. You go to Houston, you get a win or a draw, you're hosting a playoff game. Yep. They control their destiny.
So it's exciting to come to the end. So many different scenarios that can occur, but for me is that it's great to see just the passion and the commitment, how the intensity level has changed, this last 3 or 4 weeks. And, the one thing I will say, I know you just wish that, you could have this every game when there's something on the line from the beginning, because you can just see, the quality and the intensity in every game, the commitment, everything there is just to a different level. And hopefully we can get that from start to end.
And as much as the seeding's up for grabs in the East, it is a total crapshoot in the West.
Yeah.
A lot going on there. I mean, let's take a look at the table in the West. And, I mean,
look at that.
Look here. You've got San Jose, Dallas, Salt Lake, all within 1 point, playing for that last playoff spot. I'm kind of rooting for RSL. I think they've had the best story of the season, playing a bunch of young guys. Mike Peckey's come in, done a really good job to get them going. I mean, if they can get a win and those two teams pick up draws or losses, RSL's in the playoff, I think they're the most deserving team. San Jose, minus 22 goal differential, a coaching change in the middle of the year. Nothing that really excites me about that team. And Dallas, one of the worst collapses this league has ever seen.
One of the coolest things about this Western Conference standings is Vancouver plays Portland. Portland hosts that game.
A battle for first place. And Vancouver is another team that the luck has gone with them this season. They've had a lot of results go their way. They're probably the team that is not as good as their points show, but credit to Carl Robinson because he's found ways to make that work all season long.
But the one thing, when you look at it, you're right, Paul, when you look at a team that maybe not playing for a playoff spot, but a team like Minnesota, expansion team coming in, if they can win this game, we're talking about it maybe tying, getting 11 wins.
11 wins would leave them one short. Going into this year, the two teams that had the most wins in expansion history were Seattle in 2009 when they made the playoffs and Orlando City under Adrian Heath. He has a chance to be within one of that.
Well, it's a decision day coming up this Sunday. Chicago Fire, a 3 o'clock start. You can catch the pregame at 2:30 on NBC Sports Chicago. Dan Kelly, Frank Lopez on the call. Thanks a lot to Nelson Rodriguez for joining us today. Fred Hubner, Paul Tenorio, Frank Lopez. Have a great weekend. Let's see if the Fire can get 3 points this weekend. Chicago Fire Weekly presented by CIBC, the official bank of your Chicago Fire.